But safe pair of hands, Packie Bonner, out before the media yesterday. So I don't know if people would have seen this, but Neil O'Riordan wrote a brilliant column earlier in the week about how sport is completely underfunded in this country, and he went back to figures that the FAI and UEFA had produced as a result of a survey that they'd done, and the value of sport is actually in the billions. The value of football is in the billions to the exchequer that they don't get any return on. So it's in mental health, it's in social, the glue that holds us all together. It's in education. It's in loads of other departments that you would kind of ascribe this value to football. And yesterday was the updated figures that they were pushing out there, and it's the beginning of football starting to assert itself as an important factor in our lives for all sorts of different reasons. And so that was what the announcement yesterday was supposed to be about, but it's completely overshadowed in the papers because safe pair of hands, Packie Bonner was out talking about the contract situation, and unfortunately it was safe pair of hands Packie circa 1990 quarter-final pushing the ball back out to Schillaci, or worse, USA 94 when Wim Jonk is like, will I have a pot shot from 40 yards? Nah, keeper will save this. Sure, I'll do it anyway. Oh, it's in the back of the net. There was a bit of that. So you'd think that it's the easiest thing in the world is to come out and say Stephen Kenny's doing a great job, and the official response from the board is coming in a couple of weeks' time. We're all very happy with how things have gone, but obviously there's loads to be discussed, and I'd hate to, I can't say anything just at the minute, but instead it seems like there was just a bit of a you're all asking me questions about the contract. I can't be answering that.
Yeah, like this sort of, I think he's kind of created a little bit of a lightning rod here that didn't need to exist, to be honest. Where
it's a big story. All of a sudden it's become a much bigger story today than a non-story.
Exactly. So like, I mean, what we're reading in the papers and online is that he was asked if he felt Stephen Kenny was doing a good job. The question, I don't think, was,
what's your opinion? Like?
Yeah, exactly. And his response was, I'm not going to answer that because I know what you are getting to. I think we have to discuss that to review everything. So I'm not even going to go there because I know what you're getting at. So man on 12-person committee can't give opinion on whether manager is doing job would suggest to me that this is going to be a relatively complicated process over the next little while. And anybody who thinks that there's going to be a new deal handed out to Stephen Kenny pretty easily next month, or the end of this month maybe, has got another thing coming, especially if they're expecting him to be at the helm until the end of the Euro 2024 campaign.
It just doesn't make any sense the way that they're approaching this, and the fact that they don't have a story ready to go. Like Packie saying he's not the kingmaker, he's not the only one on the board who's going to have an opinion because he's the football man on the board, even though he's the non-executive, or he's the non-football, non-FAI appointed, one of the 4 non-FAI appointed directors. But look at the headlines, right? Bond the case but no rush. Packie warns over boss deal. So warning, negative. Holding tight is the mail. FAI may go for a short-term Kenny contract. If I was Stephen Kenny and they'd come and say, we'll give you a contract for 2 more games, I'd be like, nope. Find a new manager, lads. Off you go. Go on, find a new manager and see what happens. Let's see you get a sponsor with Noel King as the interim manager. How'd that work out for you the last time?
No disrespect to Noel King, obviously.
Bonner parries questions on Kenny's future is the Examiner headline. Bonner refuses to endorse Kenny but points to progress is the Irish Times headline. I'm not the kingmaker, Bonner. That was the headline on the Indo this morning on Dan McDonald's piece. Bonner, Kenny's fate not in my hands, says Packie Bonner, and that I don't know. Do I have the star? Did I do the star? Packie tight-lipped on Kenny, right? It's like 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards.
Would you actually do that if you were Stephen Kenny? Tell him to shove it if they came up.
Yeah, find somebody else. No, either we're getting married or we're not. But you can't be a little bit pregnant, and you're like, we're not sure. Okay, grand, you're not sure. Screw you. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Like, I mean, if they had a lucrative sponsor, if they were in rude health financially, they could go and say, you know what, we will get Neil Lennon. Which, by the way, isn't actually a good idea. If they had all the money, that still would be a bad idea.
Hey, let's see what happens when that happens.
But the fact is, I don't think they can even get to that point of making a bad decision with the successor, because it will just be like, I don't know, somebody already on the books or somebody somebody who wouldn't be he wouldn't do a good job. I don't think it just doesn't make a whole pile of sense to offer him that short-term deal and not just allow him to see through the Euro 2024 campaign, because it would it would suggest to me, if it's going to be a short-term campaign, that the jury is still very much out on Stephen Kenny at FAI board level, and that these reports about there being a split over the last little while are very much on the money, that there really is.
I think it's fair for the public to say the jury is very much out on the new FAI board, and the whole sense that the new FAI is different from previous versions of the FAI. Granted, they're very different from the Delaney era FAI, but are they that different from the previous era, which allowed the Delaney era to prosper? Like, what is the story with this? Why are they so indecisive about one of the most important decisions in Irish sport? Why have they not been able to use the evidence of the full stadium, the away fans, the improved performance, back-to-back 3-0 away wins for the first time, is it in 20 years, in a qualifying campaign and competitive matches? Why have they not been able to come to the conclusion, the correct conclusion, that, yeah, we're just going to give you the next campaign, let's settle everything down and let's move on? Instead of this, yesterday was supposed to be a big day for the FAI to begin putting pressure and building the sense of football as an important social glue, and instead we're left reading all the back pages, which are kind of negative, using negative language about the Republic of Ireland manager and the FAI and the contract situation. It was a really straightforward slam dunk, but they couldn't do it, and so they still do not have their house in order, and you still query about. So Packie won't say this, Packie won't say what his opinion is, but loads of other of his colleagues appear to be telling people off the record and not putting their name to it what their view is on what the contract situation should be with Kenny. That's where this bullshit of the short contract and let's give him another couple of months. What kind of planning is that? So somebody is saying that, and then publicly, Packie could have said what he thought. He could have told us what he thought. There's one other thing I would just say about this. If Packie is a contender for the rude doctor job, then he should say that as well. Like, if he's not a contender, that's great. I think it would actually be better for Irish football if at this stage Packie was going to sit on the board and that would be his role in Irish football. But if he is going to be a contender for the rude doctor role, then he's actually a little bit compromised when it comes to all of this stuff. So, there would just be a little bit of a conflict of interest if he is going to go for that job. If he's not going to go for that job, then I think that's totally fine. But it would be good if I don't know if maybe he was asked that, maybe it'll come out in the next couple of days, maybe it wasn't important, I don't know, but it would be good to know that. And one last thing, just one more thing. He was asked about a report in, was it the Sunday Times, that he was a bit sceptical about Kenny, and he refused to. It was maybe it was a mistake, but it was a non-denial denial. It was like, I'm not getting into that, that's just speculation. Nobody spoke to me, and because nobody spoke to me, I'm not going to get into it. Which, on one level, is fair enough, but the way that comes across is, was it right? Just because they didn't speak to you, does that mean that they didn't hear it through a third party who was actually relaying what you had thought in a private conversation? Or do you not think that? Because I'm left unclear about that. So, I don't know. You just feel like sometimes, for trying to get out of their own way, they end up tripping up, and we're left with doubt.
Yeah, and it's important that you say they here, like, to come to Packie Bonner's defence slightly here. It does seem that maybe he might have been given instructions that this was the approach yesterday, that don't commit to Stephen Kenny, don't commit to anything about that story about you being sceptical.
He's his own man too. He's a very experienced football administrator, and I think he's a brilliant appointment to the board in many respects. Like, he's a bridge to the past that we really need, and I just think that there's a few missteps there yesterday that have left things more muddy than they were beforehand.
But the point I'm trying to make, it just speaks of maybe a setup at the moment where what they want to say publicly is nothing, and it's like, let's just batten down the hatches for the time being.
Push this back until after the board meeting.
Yeah, that makes.
You know the dates. You know what the questions.
And you know
what
you're going to be asked about.
Like, it's a very obvious thing. You know that everyone's going to say, "What's the story with the contract? What's the story with the contract?" Until they do the contract, and as soon as they do the contract, the next questions are going to be, "What's the story with the sponsor?" Right? But, like, who cares? Ultimately, that's going to be not that big a deal. They'll get somebody, and there's loads of people interested, but who might be looking at this stuff going, "Who's the manager going to be for the sponsor? Who's going to show up?"
Like, especially in an era of such uncertainty, like, can you say that? Like, I mean, you're definitely going to have a full stadium for the next international window. You just can't say that for sure right now. But the one thing you can do is give yourself certainty on the manager's role. That is something that is in the FAI's control. They can't control a pandemic. They can't control what people are going to do outside, but they can control who their manager is going to be. And for commercial reasons, you would have thought that would have been a good move to try and provide that certainty.
Well, yeah, I do wonder if there's an element of... we'll talk about this a little bit later on. What's your view out there this morning? 0879 180 180. That's the number you can WhatsApp us on. You can just leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We'll get to those. It'd be just great if we could stop talking about this. I would like to stop talking about this. I'd like more to be talking about the future of the Irish players and focusing on where they're going to end up, if they're going to end up, why they're not getting the first team in the various teams they're on, from that perspective. And then we've loads of Premier League stuff to talk about, including Manchester United's unbelievable 5-a-side performance yesterday, which we'll come back to a little bit later on in the show.